I wanted to make a video on the car as it sits, because the last video I basically showed you guys pulling the motor apart, or pulling the motor out of the car. But this is how she's sitting. I got a nice little tent here, so at least it's in the shade, but I mean, it's very dusty. I keep the back of it open because I've got the Lemon's car back there, but the car hasn't moved since I pulled the motor. It's been sitting like this. While I have the motor out, I'm going to try to clean up the bay as much as possible. I'm gonna redo, these are the ABS lines that I relocated. The biggest part of the job though is going to be building a wiring harness and trying to clean this mess up a little bit. So yeah, the transmission's stored in the shop next door, or my storage unit, whatever you want to call it. And the motor, you know what, let's go talk about the motor right now. All right, so the motor for the most part hasn't been touched since I pulled it out. I kind of pulled it out and prepared it for storage, taped up the intake manifold, and wrapped it up in a tarp, and it's been sitting like that since. I did notice this crank bolt was loose, and I think that's what was knocking. It was literally hand tight, like it was hand tight, hand loose, whatever you want to call it. So before this motor gets put back in the car, it's going to get a complete refresh. I'm going to even go in as far as doing valve stem seals, because I did have some leakage there. So it's going to be quite a bit of a project. That's going to be, you know, I'm gonna rewrap the exhaust manifold, new turbo blanket. This is for my old one, and it's just completely torn up, as you can see, but it's better than nothing, so that's why I had it there. I'm going to reroute this oil line. You can see I've got a oil filter relocation kit as well. I need to figure out where I'm going to mount that on the chassis, but that's going to get relocated as well. So lots of small little things to do on this thing before I put it back together. I'm going to do a full timing belt job. As you can see, this is a blue Gates racing belt, and I have no idea why it's no longer blue. It has no more than 10,000 miles on it, so I suspect this lower plastic housing is rubbing on the belt, and that's why it's all black inside of there. But yeah, let's go back inside and see what other parts I've got saved up for this thing. All right guys, so this is my first draft of things I know I need to get done on the car before it gets put back together. I've got a bunch of these parts. I've been stacking these parts for years. This has been a list that's been ever evolving. But this was also a main reason I wanted to take the engine out, was because I knew I had to do a bunch of this small stuff, so it would have been easier just to do it with the engine out. So I'm just gonna start at the top of the list. I don't know if you guys will be able to read this, but engine and trans mounts, I want to go with poly. Probably go with the excessive manufacturing engine and trans mounts there. The turbo oil drain also needs to get rebuilt. I feel like the angle of my drain wasn't very good before, so that was kind of backing some oil back up into the turbo, and it was smoking. I want to get a power steering cooler, so I want to do my cooler and lines. Oil cooler and lines, I showed you guys there. The adapter bracket I have for where the filter housing goes. I have the rest of that system as well. I just need the actual cooler. I don't know where I'm gonna put it yet. I want to put it in the front, but I also don't have a bash bar yet, so I'd like to have it somewhere where it's not super exposed in case I do put the car into a wall or something. Pilot bearing, release bearing, valve stem seals, rear main seals, oil pressure sensor, something I don't have wired into the AEM Infinity, which I want to have, just so I can have some fail-safes for when I'm on the track. Oil temp sensor, again, just as a fail-safe. I need to replace my water temp sensor. I have one on there, but the clip on it is broken, so I just want to replace it when I have everything taken apart. I'm going to put in a new condenser while it's apart, just because we live in Arizona and I need my AC working as best as it possibly can be. So it's a 20-year-old car at this point, so I might as well put a new condenser in it. Custom drive shaft, you'll see, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got 3 money marks and a sad face, because I have the Drift Motion AR5 swap drive shaft kit that they sell with their adapters and their custom drive shaft. It's god awful. It's got no flex to it, it's got no give to it, it's solid on both ends. There's not a CV joint or anything in that drive shaft, and it creates vibrations. It's very well documented. Drift Motion won't take credit for it, but it's every other IS300 AR5 swap that I know that uses their kit has the same vibrations at freeway speeds around 75 to 85 mile an hour. It's been repaired, or it's been fixed with a custom drive shaft with a high-speed CV joint, kind of like the Porsches. What else? magnetic drain plug, yada yada yada. AN fitting for intake for my valve covers going to, I'm sorry, not the valve covers. AN fitting for the intake to my catch can. So my intake tube that I have right now has an AN line, but coming out of my catch can I don't have an AN line, so I'd like to retrofit that into an AN line. And realistically, I'm probably going to get a whole new catch can. I don't think the one I have works. I mentioned power steering coolers. That's my to-buy list. My to-do list, I have to extract a broken head from the back, or a broken bolt from the back of the head. It's the bolt that holds the coil packs on, the one all the way closest to the firewall. It's broken. I got the car that way. It's always been that way. Figured now's the time to fix it while I have the engine out. Rewrap the exhaust manifold with, you know, the DEI heat wrap. I've got all that stuff already. I've had it for a long time. Wiring is the big one. I'm not happy about it, but I'm most likely going to end up building a custom wiring harness for the car. It's going to be complicated, and truthfully, I'm not qualified. I'm not a mechanic, man. I don't even work in the automotive industry, so I'm just a hobbyist. So building a wiring harness, in my opinion, is like the ultimate car guy thing you can be doing. So that's going to be most likely what's going to be holding this build up for a long time. I want to replace my boost lines. Cluster question marks here. I'm not sure if I want to keep the stock OEM Altezza cluster, not the Altezza, but the IS cluster, or I think I really want to delete all that stuff and put in a BTI display there, like a 7-inch display or whatever will fit. I'm not even positive, but AEM Infinity, there's lots of options for digital displays, custom dashes or whatever, so that's up in the air. I really want to do it. It's going to depend on how I end up building my wiring harness and how complicated it gets and how far I'm willing to dive into it. Install map sensor. So I've got a map sensor on it, but I want to upgrade to a stainless steel one. I've got a brass one on there. My tuner, not really happy about it. It's also mounted to the engine. Not happy about that either. So ideally, I'd like to mount the map sensor off of the engine, maybe to the firewall somewhere or a strut tower, and plumb it with a hose so it's reading accurately. I want to chase my bell housing bolts. They were kind of just, the threads were dirty. Degrease, pressure wash, engine chassis, install oil cooler. So that's for the most part what I have on my list. I guarantee as soon as I start knocking some of these things out on this list, it's gonna keep growing. So that's why it's on a whiteboard, so I can erase and add things to it as I find. But lots of work to get done. Realistically, the car's gonna be down for a couple of months. I was really hoping to take it out to Supers in Vegas in October. It's not gonna happen, unfortunately. I've been working crazy hours with all this COVID stuff. I've been fortunate enough to not stop working, so not complaining, but time for race cars is at an all-time low right now, so that's kind of where we're at. As you just saw, I don't necessarily have a garage either, so my wrenching situation is not ideal. Especially summertime, it's extremely hot where I live, so the motivation to make progress on the car is at an all-time low, especially with how apart it is right now. So for the time being, I'm just going to be ordering parts. I need to do, my valve stem seals are my priority because that's what I want to do with the engine out of the car for sure. And then I'll put a new timing kit in it, even though that one's not very old, just because I have it apart. I'll reseal the motor, probably do the cam seals, valve stem cover, valve covers, rear main seals, all that good stuff. But that's where we're at. I just wanted to give an update because the last video I posted of the car, it was just me pulling the motor and that was it. So I've got a whole room full of parts that's been waiting. Some of them I've had for over a year. Some of them I just got. I still have a bunch of parts coming in. So the next video you will see me make about this car will probably be me starting to make progress on it and start working on it. So that's it, boys. Thanks for following along. This build is going to take some time, but this IS is going to come back stronger than ever before. My goal is 500 horsepower on pump gas. Another dilemma I've been having while I have the car apart is, do I go ahead and throw an E85 fuel system in it just to be ready for whatever I want to when I decide I want to pull the trigger on the E85, or do I also build the head? I really want a heavy cam lobe because the 2Js I think are the best sounding engine ever made, so I just want mine to sound as good as it can. I think that the cams are not necessary for my power level, for my power goals, but it would definitely help, especially on pump gas. But at the same time, there's like a cost-benefit, ratio to this, because I don't necessarily need a built head to make 500 horsepower. I don't necessarily ever see myself using more than 600-700 horsepower in this chassis, mainly because of my transmission. The AR5 is sketchy at those power levels at best. So my idea is to build it to 500 horsepower and just drive the piss out of it, and hopefully have a reliable car I can beat on. I want a street car. I don't necessarily want a dedicated track car just yet, but at the same time, I want to be able to take it to the track and have it hold its own on the whole day without overheating or any of those issues that a regular car might have on the track, especially when making 500 horsepower. That's the plan. It's going to be a couple months in the works for sure. Hopefully just a couple months and not a year. But I'm making this video to document the beginning of the rebuild, so to say. I don't want to take the head off of the motor. I don't think that I need to go that deep into it. Again, time is of the essence. I'd like to have this thing done by the end of the year, but we'll see where we're at. That gives me about 5-ish months. That's where we're at. Thanks for watching, boys. We'll see you in the next video.